welcome back to the Target Smart Podcast. I'm Anthony Sanfilippo, joined as always by Albert Morales. Albert's good to see you again, and we have maybe the coolest guest that we could possibly have. It's certainly the coolest we've had so far, but probably the coolest guest that we could ever conceive having on this podcast. And he's an old friend of yours, and which is, you have every connection known to man in the Democratic Party, but he's an old friend of yours. Why don't you tell our listeners who our guest is going to be today?
Well, yes, not to take away from the many strategists that we've had.
Who are also cool. Just not as cool.
But Jaime Harrison and I go way back to my days of working under Howard Dean, of all people, at the DNC. We'll get a little bit into the details, I think, during our conversation, depending on where it takes us. But Jaime is, I talk to a lot of young people when they come into town, Anthony, and, they're seeking advice on how to make it in Washington. And I always give them the same formula and say, look at Jaime Harrison. That's the model. Here's a guy who came from humble beginnings, much like I did. He comes from South Carolina, rural South Carolina, raised by his grandparents, but he never forgot where he came from. But one thing that's unique about Jaime in this town is that he abides by the 80% rule. And, you often hear about people telling you, 80% of life is showing up. No, anybody can show up to the office. But if they're not dressed well, if their appearance is shot, and you're not going to send that person into a meeting to represent your company. 80% of life is treating people the way you want to be treated, and Jaime gets that. Jaime treats everyone equally. I have never, ever in my life, and I've known him for a long time now, never heard him disrespect anyone, seen him treat anyone untoward. He is the model of how you want to comport yourself in this town. The rest is easy. Obviously, Jaime's very bright. He doesn't talk much about his academic pedigree, but I like to kid him about it. He's a Yale man, and he also went to Georgetown Law while working under Jim Clyburn, a legend in his own right, who is responsible for the success of many of us in this town. He didn't have to work for Mr. Clyburn for him to care about you. I still have a pair of Jim Clyburn cufflinks that he gave me one year for taking care of some of his supporters at the Democratic National Convention in Denver. And I only wear those when I'm going to go on the Hill or there's an event where he's going to be, so I can go show him, hey, remember these. But he's to know Jaime is to love him. We're lucky to have him as a chairman in this critical time. He understands the workings of the national party, having been a state party chairman himself in South Carolina. He knows the needs of our organization, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, the guy has shattered all kinds of fundraising records. There's a reason why you're seeing more Kamala Harris ads than you are seeing Donald J. Trump ads, whether you're in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or name the battleground state. That can be attributed to not only to the Harris campaign, but to Jaime to a big degree. So I'm really excited about this one. We've been trying to get him, but it's an election year. Getting on his schedule, and you'll see he just got in from he's been on the bus tour with the governors of these Midwestern states that are key to our victory in the Blue Wall, shoring that up. Gretchen Whitmer, who we talked about recently, and I think the governor from Wisconsin and Shapiro over in Pennsylvania. So really looking forward to this one, Anthony. I think.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a great interview. But before we get to Chairman Harrison, let me just remind everyone that you should be subscribing to the Target Smart Podcast. That's right. You should subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can subscribe and like us, hit that like button, smash it on YouTube, because that helps us get out into the world a little bit more. And you can always connect with us on X at Target Smart, on Facebook, Target Smart DC, and on our LinkedIn page. And if you want to email us, tell us how you liked and loved the interview that we're about to have with Jaime Harrison. You can email us at the Target Smart Podcast at targetsmart.com. So without further ado, Albert, let's bring in DNC Chair Jaime Harrison.
Jaime Harrison, welcome to the Target Smart Podcast, the long-awaited episode. Our viewers have been emailing us, phoning us, sending us instant messages, you name it. When's the chairman going to be on? Do you even know the chairman? I get all these people. We see pictures, but they could be doctored. But so here we are, long last. Jaime Harrison, chairman of the Democratic National Committee, who just came off of a bus tour of the Blue Wall. The Blue Wall he's been shoring up for Democrats. We're so grateful that you made time for this, Jim. We know you just got into town and you're only going to recharge your batteries for a few hours and hit the road again so that we ensure a Harris-Walz victory. Jaime, we always like to start the podcast by, even though the masses know who you are, a lot of people don't really know your story, how you got to be where you are today. I know it because we've been friends a long time, and I appreciate that friendship more than you know. But give our audience just a quick rundown of how you ended up leading the Democratic National Committee. I mean, for someone from South Carolina in a very small town, for you to get to where you are is nothing short of remarkable. And I think it's a story that everyone should hear and learn from.
Well, I appreciate that, Albert, and appreciate you, Anthony. But Albert, I really appreciate your friendship. And the reason why I'm here is because of Albert Morales. No, I mean, Albert's been just a great friend and really has helped me along the way in my journey in politics. And, I give him plenty of hell, but I love the guy so much. And because his heart is always in doing what's best for everybody. And he never forgets where he comes from. And never forgets the people who has helped him along the way. And, they often say in DC, and I think they were thinking about people like Lindsey Graham when they said that, but if you want a friend in Washington, you need to get a dog. But let me tell you, the person who said that didn't have a friend in Albert Morales, because Albert is a true friend and will always be my friend. And he's always by my side. I'm always by his. So, Albert, it's my honor and pleasure to be on this podcast with you. And I'm proud of you, my brother, and I'm grateful for you as well.
Tear up here.
but the journey is, we all have our own story, right? And we had a path. And I think when you think about, Albert, your story and my story, it goes to the greatness of this country. How, little guys like us can come from, what society would say is not much of anything, but yet be involved and be in the room when most of the biggest decisions in terms of American politics have been made, and to play a part in that. I grew up son of a teen mom. My mom was 16 when she had me. She dropped out of school. I was raised by grandparents with my grandfather had a 4th grade education. He paved roads here in South Carolina. My grandmother, 8th grade education. She picked cotton and cleaned houses. And so I was the first in my family to go to college. Nobody had ever been interested or participated in politics, but my interest was piqued, starting with, my grandfather forced me to watch the 88 convention and Jesse Jackson speaking. And that just, planted a seed. And I was interested in politics ever since. Worked on the Clinton campaign in '92. I was 16 years old, volunteering and get folks registered and all. Met Jim Clyburn, which really changed my life. He calls me his bad penny. He can never get rid of. But I met him when I was a junior in high school, invited him to my high school to come and speak and to install me as president of the National Honor Society. And he actually showed up. And then, went on to college, interned for Senator Fritz Hollins the summer after my freshman year. And Albert, I don't know if I ever told you a story about we came into the office one day as interns, and in South Carolina during the summer, we always get produce that comes from the state that goes up to the congressional offices. Well, that year it was watermelons. And so they had the interns delivering watermelons, and I was all dressed up and nicely in my suit. I was like, I be damned. They got this black guy up here delivering watermelons. Watermelons around the Capitol. And then, folks are following me around. I got this big ass cart with these watermelons going all around. Like, watermelons for sale, watermelons for sale. No, seriously. But yeah, it was an interesting thing.
What year was this?
This had to be summer '95.
Yeah.
And there's an article of us. I know I have a picture of it somewhere with Senator Hollins, and like we're holding the watermelons, right? Oh, well, I did that. Then I did internship, Congressional Black Caucus internship with Jim Clyburn the summer after my junior year, and then ended up coming back home to South Carolina. I taught high school for a year, worked at a nonprofit, and then joined Clyburn, started law school at Georgetown, and then joined Clyburn's staff in 2002 as policy.
While you were in law school.
Yes, while I was in law school. So
I
was in the middle of my second year at law school at Georgetown. I had just finished the first semester of the second year, and around December, and Clyburn had just got elected vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus. Clyburn's chief of staff called me. I was driving home for the Christmas holidays, and he said, Jamie, I don't know if you heard, but the congressman got elected as vice chair of the House Dems, and he gets to add more staff, and we've been thinking about who that was, and he said he wanted you. And I was like, that's fantastic, but I'm in law school right now. And he said, well, I know. We still want you to come and work. And so I joined the staff that January. Clyburn gave me, I had never worked on appropriations in my life. They gave me 5 appropriations bills to be responsible for. Let me tell you the 5: labor, health, ed, defense, military construction, VA, Homeland Security, and Interior. So 5 of the largest bills that appropriations, and I had never done that shit in my life. And so I was like, okay, well, what I do? They said, well, here are all the files from what he has done in the past. You can go ahead and start reading them, and then you'll figure it out. You're smart. And so that's what I did. I figured out at that time they were doing the earmarks. And so, trying to figure out what it is that he likes to fund, which are the programs that he liked to support. And then in classic Southern fashion, so I got through the first year, but the second year, I added a little twist to it. I started baking cakes, a red velvet cake. And Albert, I make red. So I would put in my earmark request for Clyburn for every one of these bills, and I would send a red velvet cake to the clerk when I submitted the request. And Clyburn asked, he said, I got more earmarks this year than the Republicans on the committee, because we were in the minority at the time. He said, it's the damnest thing. I don't know how it is. I said, well, boss, I didn't tell you this, but when I submit your request, I also sent a homemade red velvet cake with it. He said, I'd be damned. But But listen, the way to a person's heart is through their stomach.
Through their stomach. That's right.
As Albert knows.
Hey, Jamie, I'm Italian, so I know all about it, right? Like I'm big into food. Albert and I talk about food all the time.
Oh man,
that's a great story.
Well,
it's
Anthony,
funny.
I'll tell you an Albert food story one day. We'll say that.
Go ahead and do the
That's
steak.
good.
Don't name the steakhouse.
Well, listen. So when I met Albert, it was right around 2006, I believe, or 2005, because I was in Clyburn's office. Albert was working at the DNC under Howard Dean, and I met Moses Mercado, and we all became fast friends. Howard Dean was rolling out his 50-state strategy, but also working on the presidential primary calendar and changing that around. And so the thoughts were about, and a lot of people, Albert, probably don't know this, when we're thinking about adding 2 more states, it was South Carolina versus Alabama. And then it was, I think, Colorado, right? Was it Colorado versus Nevada? So Clyburn and Harry Reid was senator from Nevada, and Clyburn from South Carolina, sort of forged together a relationship. And then what they were trying to do was support Howard Dean in that effort, particularly with his 50-state strategy and all that other stuff. And in the end of the day, South Carolina became the southern state, the first in the South, and Nevada became the first in the West. But that's when I really got an opportunity to meet Moses and Albert, and we just became fast friends. And so much so that we would hang out all the time. After work we go, hang out. Moses would cook all the time on the grill and all that stuff. We go to his house, and then I hang out with Albert. So there was one day, fast forward, we went to a steakhouse, and man, I think about this story all the time. So Albert had this dog. Albert, what's oh my God, but Chowder, yes. Sweet dog. Oh, it was a beautiful golden lab. Such a sweet dog. Albert's first son, as he called him. So we're all going to the steakhouse and we're ordering, and Albert orders this big ass steak, and it comes up. Now this is a fancy steakhouse, I want you to know. It comes up and he starts, cutting it up and eating. He's like, I don't know, there's something that's not right about this steak. And he keeps eating and keeps eating. This steak's just not right, not done right. Albert eats about 2/3 of the steak, and finally the waiter comes over. He said, I'm eating this steak and it's just not right. I think I'm going to send it back. I need another steak. 2/3 of the steak. I mean, it's a big steak. 2/3 of the steak is gone because he's eating it. So the guy comes back out. He brings Albert another steak, and he starts eating steak. But Albert says for the steak that was there, the guy says, "Well, I'll take that back and we'll throw it away." Albert says, "No. What I want is, can you box that up and I can take it home for my dog?" So not only did he get like 1 2/3 steak for himself, he also got the remaining steak and bones for his dog.
I guess the big question is, Albert, was the steak really not good, or were you thinking about the dog the whole time?
In the immortal words of Dave Chappelle, I plead the fifth.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I do want to go back to your relationship with Jim Clyburn.
Yeah.
Because we don't all get to where we are by chance, right? Someone gives us that boost.
Yeah.
But what he did with you in your career, your second year in law school or your first year in law school, for him to say, I don't care. I mean, that's not an opportunity. That's like an act that he did.
No,
I can't think of anyone else who would have done that.
It really is. And I know you have a similar relationship with Bill Richardson. And for me, Clyburn is my political father. Everything I have learned in politics, I've learned at his knee. And with his guidance and his mentorship. And I remember very early on, Albert, he wanted me there on that in the office, and he told me, he said, I saw how you worked as an intern, and you would be one of the first people in the office. I mean, oftentimes I would be in the office when the first staffer that would be in the office when Clyburn would get there, and one of the last people to leave when he was leaving, and that was as an intern. And he said, I saw how hard you worked. I know you're smart, and I know your people in South Carolina, and so I know you're loyal. And so he gave me a shot. And then when he became the chair of the House Democratic Caucus, he named me as the executive director. I was 29 years old. First Black person to ever hold that role in the history of the House. Youngest person to ever do it. And then that next year, he became the majority whip, and I ran the whip operation. Again, the youngest and first Black person to do that as well. And it was big because, Albert, and this is why I love Jim Clyburn. And again, he's loyal, and that is that loyalty that is embedded in me. I overheard a conversation when he was becoming whip. I think it was when he was becoming whip. It was either whip or the ED. When somebody said to him, he said, well, Jim, I know Jamie's a great guy, young guy, whatever. But, some of Dick Gephardt's old people are still there. They have much more experience, and they could help you, run that office. And Clyburn said to them clearly, he said, Jamie is going to be my leader on that floor. I know him. I trust him. He's smart enough. He can do the job. And that was it.
That makes all the difference.
It makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. He had the confidence in me. And so knowing that, I knew that I had to step up my game. And so I made sure that everything, all of our I's were dotted and T's crossed, because particularly as a minority, as a person of color, the spotlight is even on you more. You remember, Albert, that there were some people who didn't want Jim Clyburn to be the House Majority Whip. Rahm Emanuel actually wanted that job, and there was a contentious fight for it initially. And so the scrutiny was high. Can Jim Clyburn raise the money? Can he be a strong whip and whatever? Well, we never lost a damn floor vote in the time that I ran that whip operation, because we knew we had to, not only did we have to perform and do the job, but we had to do it at a level that had never been done before. And we were successful in that. And so, I never wanted to fail him, because Jim Clyburn never failed me, and I never wanted to fail him. And so we had some tough votes. There were a lot of things that we were able to get done, but he's always stood by me. I mean, I wouldn't be DNC chair right now, but for Jim Clyburn standing up for me, making sure he put in a positive word with President Biden. And so I'm really grateful for him, and there's nothing that he can ask of me that I wouldn't do.
You talk about making a difference and how much he made a difference for you, Jamie.
Yeah.
When you talk about making a difference, you've also made a difference. It's in your time as chair of the DNC. And one of the things that I see from afar, of course, I'm up here in battleground PA, but you've had some success in kind of taking southern states that were traditionally red states, and you kind of have swung them in the purple direction at this point. What has been the reason for that success so far to kind of get it to that point?
Well, I like to consider myself an acolyte of Howard Dean's 50-state strategy, because I believe it was smart. I don't believe that you should ever cede any state or any area to the Republican Party, because when you do that, Anthony, you in essence, you give them the authority to do whatever the hell they want to do to the people that live in those communities. And what happens is they then tend to vote for the most extreme people. And those extreme people go to Washington, D.C., or they go to their state capitals, and they impose their will and that extremism on everybody. And so you got to compete everywhere. You got to build a foundation, because politics is like a pendulum. Like one day it may be over here, but you give it time and it'll swing back. But you got to be prepared for that. You got to have the operation. You got to make sure that you're building a bench. You got to make sure you have the infrastructure to communicate your message. You got to be on the ground to disseminate that message to the people. So as chair, we went back to a 57 state and territory strategy. We also enhanced that by creating a number of other programs. I started the first of its kind, or Red State Fund, where we set aside millions of dollars specifically to our red states. So every state party gets a minimum $12,500 a month from us, just to help with general operations and staff. We added an additional $2,500 for red states. There's another pot of money there for grants that are specifically targeted to red states. So if they got some special voter registration initiative in some of our areas, they have Native American communities and they want to set up organizing with those communities, that they can apply for a grant from the DNC in order to get some additional funds for that. And then we have our State Party Innovation Fund, which is general fund for competitive grants for all of our states, in which the red states can compete in that pot as well. So we've really tried hard in order to rebuild the infrastructure of the parties and the state parties that, literally for most of the Obama years kind of fell apart because we moved away from a 50-state strategy. And I think we're seeing dividends as a result, but this can't just be something that's short term, right? I tell people, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you're not going to rebuild some of these parties overnight, particularly when they just, they were drying up on a vine for over a decade. So you got to take small steps. You got to bring in the right type of leadership, and you got to continue it. And I'm thankful for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who understood the vision and supported that. Because had Biden said, don't you dare spend all that damn money in all of these other states, we would not be in the place that we're in now. We have a president and vice president who are very, very, very supportive of this effort. And I think it's how we beat back the red wave. And I ultimately believe is how we will win this election this November.
And Albert, before you go to your next question, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Jamie was just saying. So, for example, 20 years ago, I worked at a newspaper in the Philadelphia area, and I covered politics in Delaware County, just outside of Philadelphia. It was overwhelmingly Republican. It had been their leadership in the county had been Republican for 30 years. There had never even been a Democrat on the county commission, right? Nobody. Now it's run entirely by Democrats. So there's an area that has kind of flipped over the course of the last decade. And yet you guys are planning on having a Kamala Harris sit down with CNN, Anderson Cooper, here in Delaware County. I'm not sure where. You guys haven't announced where that's at yet, but that's going to be next week. So when you look at a place like that, this is an example of what you're talking about, where it's slowly you built it to the point where it's become blue, but then you have to maintain that so that it doesn't go back to being red again. And is that a fair assessment there?
There you go. And you have to constantly, you can't, once you start driving down this road, it's one way, you can't go back, right? You got to continue. You got to continue going until you get to the destination, which is you want to make blue states permanently blue. You want to turn red states purple, and their purple states, you want to move them to the blue column. But that means constant innovation, constant investment, and continuing the effort. So whomever takes over as DNC chair next, it's really, really important. Like that, this is going to be a critical.
4 more years. More years.
Albert, if you like me to be happily married, then 4 more years. It's not.
Well, hey, real quickly on that note, Jamie, all of that takes money, and you shattered the fundraising records that have existed for several years now. What do you do when you call up that person that can do that max out check? What's your pitch? Because obviously you've been hugely successful. There's a reason why we're seeing more Kamala Harris ads than we are Trump's in every one of these battleground states. But that's thanks to obviously the campaign is doing their due diligence. But you've been at this consistently since the day you stepped into office. But what's your spiel?
Well, the pitch is easier now than what it was when I first became chair.
Yeah.
Right. The pitch then was when I first became chair. Trust me, we have a plan, right? And it was really people investing in me and the vision that we were building for what we're doing. And then the midterms happened. People saw the results of what their investments did, right? The best midterm election for an incumbent president since 1930s. And so now the pitch is you saw what your investment did in the midterms. We were able to beat back the red wave. Now this is the continuation of that and how we sustain the victories that we had and add additional victories moving forward. So it's definitely a different conversation now than it was, 2-3 years ago. And I think that's part of why we have seen the record fundraising continue. I mean, you think about it, the vice president raised $1 billion in 3 months. I mean, that's unheard of.
Thanks to your infrastructure.
Yeah, it's literally unheard of. And we have a fantastic team. And Albert, one of the things I did early on at the DNC when I came in, the tradition has always been when a new DNC chair comes in, everybody submits their resignation, the committee shrinks in terms of its size. I just thought that was asinine. I was like, we just won the presidential election with some of these people that were here. Why in the hell are you going to fire all of these people who actually won an election and then shrink down and start anew? So we kept almost everybody who wanted to stay, and the DNC stayed almost at presidential level for my first few years going into the midterm. And so it's just really important to continue the investment, to think about this not in terms of like cycle by cycle, but a long-term sustained program to strengthen the party and to protect the legacies of those Democrats that we've elected, like Joe Biden.
Well, hey, I know we're running short on time, but we get emails from our listeners, and in this case, we got a video of a couple of our more, I guess, if there were groupies to the podcast, it'd be these two. They sent us a video in last night with a couple of questions that they wanted to share with you. Can you cue that up?
Yeah, so just give me you got to give me a minute to hit play, Albert. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, God.
All right. So good. So good.
They wanted to call it, but the office wouldn't allow them.
I was cracking up when he sent me over this, Jamie. Here we go.
We got to crank the volume.
Yeah, the volume isn't working.
Oh, it's not playing? I hear it. Are you guys not hearing it?
No, I can't hear it.
Oh, no. I'm hearing it just fine. It's so weird. So, Albert, what are the questions? We'll let it play. What are the questions that Moonshiner is asking Chairman Harrison right now?
Moonshiner is a huge Harris Waltz fan, and he would like for our nominee to appear on the podcast. He's willing to do it remotely from his stable, and he can, softball questions. He says nothing too hard. The other question was from Starry Night, the other Goro donkey who's on the other side. He's all about treats. He wanted to know if a Harris-Walz administration had any plans to supply unlimited donkey treats for donkeys all over America. He's got a one-track mind. So,
One track mind.
so if you could take that back and do your magic, here at the Target Smart Podcast, we'd be honored to have her on our podcast. I know she's working the podcast,
The circuit.
the circuit pretty hard, and she's done a number of them this week. This would be we'd be honored to have her, and Governor Walz. So, but those are the requests that came in from our doctor.
Well, I'll definitely take those requests back.
Okay. All right. Well, Anthony, you got any closing questions for the chairman? I know we're running a little over.
Yeah, no. I don't know if I had mentioned that you guys are coming up here into my area. Geez, it'd be like love to pop in, but we don't know where this is going to be at. And I was trying to think like where in Delaware County could you guys possibly be holding a big town hall event with Vice President Harris? And I was racking my brain trying to come up with a spot.
I don't know whether CNN is taking the lead on finding a place, and many times that's what happens. The networks
the network picks. You guys don't pick.
Yeah,
it's just going around. Let's walk out my front door, and there all of a sudden you guys will be. It'll be right around the corner. So no, I'm excited to see that. I'm glad that Delaware County is such a big deal in this election. I love being in the thick of it. It's a lot of fun up here right now. There's a lot of fun up here right now, and I'm glad you guys are making a lot of visits. It's going to be a shame to see once the election happens, you guys are going to disappear. I'm not going to see you again for a while.
But they'll come back to Battleground, Pennsylvania.
Well, Jamie, it's been a pleasure having you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, and my closing thoughts for your folks. Listen, this is an extremely close election. We know how close it is. Yeah. But I think it's a critical election, and the contrast could not be clearer in this election. You got one party that is fighting to take away the rights and freedoms of folks who believe that America's best days are behind her, and you got another party who knows the importance of freedom and knows that America's greatness is not in her past but in her future. And so I'm so proud of Kamala Harris, who I've gotten to know very well. She and Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, over the course of these past 4 years. And nobody's working harder. I mean, it really is watching, I call her the MVP, but it really is like watching Michael Jordan in the finals. Like she's not
that
messing.
Fox interview was something, man.
Yeah, I was just about to bring it up about how great she was on the Fox interview.
I mean, it really was. And then just watching her at the rally at Heckler's last night, and she's like, she's in the zone, and yeah, exactly right. It's wonderful to see, and it's rare to see, but you see that one politician that just gets in the zone. And they can't miss a shot. It's like watching Steph Curry and just hit after hit after hit. And she's really in a zone right now, and she's peaking in a way. And my big thing is her support staff, to win this championship, the role players have to play their roles, and that's where we all come in. Like we got to get those extra rebounds. We got to dish the assists because once we give her the ball, she's going to score, but we got to do our parts in order to get that to happen. Like we got to get the steals. We got to do all of those things. And I just don't want to let her down. Like that's part of the challenge, because not only the impact of what it will have for the country, but to see how much she's putting herself into this and bringing us back into this game. Like I just don't want what we do let her down in that effort. And so
I think people are quick to forget where we were early July and how far she's brought us. I mean, it was halftime and we were down by like 50 and we're back. We're back. But it's like the first quarter of the world. It's game 1 or game 2 of the World Series. There's a long way to go, and I look forward to knocking on doors in your neighborhood. Anthony.
Yeah,
my plan.
Anthony, make sure all your friends and family are voting, buddy.
They all do. Everybody votes. Everybody votes in the household.
They're voting right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, fellas, I really appreciate this. This was a lot of fun. And thank Target Smart for all the work. I'm loving Tom on TV and all the good stuff he's doing.
Don't say that, because his head is already like, I mean, it's like, did you see me? How did my hair look? And what was my tie straight? Like, really, Tom?
Oh, yeah, I know.
People text me, when's he on next? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, follow him on Twitter.
Well, keep the data coming and the analysis, because it's great.
Great.
Yeah, geeks like me just like lap it up. I love to see it.
That's awesome.
He's our fearless leader. We love him. He's just a good person. He's
the best.
He loves the data. The guy's not sleeping at all right now, but God bless him. All right,
slop, as they say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Get some rest, and we look forward to seeing you on television again. I'm sure probably tonight sometime.
Yeah, it's coming soon.
What's your next date?
Thank you, fellas.